Chapter 1479. The pitch-black blade was unstoppable. Seeing Dustless appear, Takayuki Garden, whose mind was occupied by Tian Songyun's power, only hesitated for a moment. Then she attacked mercilessly. Not only did she not show mercy, but she also attacked more fiercely. Dustless caught a trace of bone-chilling coldness. Immediately, a bloody light appeared in his hand. An extremely evil and slender long sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The surrounding space suddenly became cold and piercing. Miserable cries and howls could be faintly heard. This sword was the first ghost blade that Dustless got from the 5 Elder Stars, the King of Pirates. Clang, 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 clang. The first ghost blade was unsheathed. Dustless, who was holding the first ghost blade, was extremely terrifying. His whole body was filled with scarlet mist, which was the embodiment of blood. His eyes had turned red, like a wild beast that was about to devour a human. Facing the black longsword, Wu Qin pursed his lips and chuckled. He didn't show any signs of weakness. A cold light swept out from his strong and powerful arm. Boom, boom, boom. Unparalleled airwaves roared and spread. Erica and Liliana, who were unprepared, were affected by the explosive power and were blown away by the strong wind. Crack, crack, crack. In addition, a slight cracking sound could be heard. How is this possible? Cracks appeared on the Kusanagi sword? Takayuki Garden's expression changed greatly. Her voice was filled with endless shock. Obviously there was something wrong with her voice. It was a vigorous and vicissitude voice. Is it that god called Tian Songyun? Dustless understood that Takayuki Garden had been corroded by Tian Songyun's power. Where did this bastard get so much strength? Tian Songyun cursed in his heart. There were some cracks on the Kusanagi sword. This was just the bad result of the first confrontation. What would happen if they fought a few more times? Tian Songyun had goosebumps. That sword is very strong. Tian Songyun took a deep breath. This was the first time he had seen such a situation. In just the first clash, the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword had already shown signs of cracking. Dustless's weapon was not inferior to the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword. Although Dustless's first-generation ghost blade had cracks, the shock it brought to Tian Songyun was indescribable. Don't be so sad. It's just a broken saber. Don't worry about it. Wu Qin caught a glimpse of Tian Songyun's gloomy face and tried to persuade her out of goodwill. A broken saber? Clear Autumn Courtyard's Huina's mouth visibly twitched. Then she angrily roared, "This is a divine artifact. How many are there in the world? To be able to fight against my weapon and not be at a disadvantage, that weapon of yours must be a divine weapon, right?" "I'm not sure about that. I just snatched it along the way." Hearing this, Dustless shook his head. Back then he had only robbed the 5 honored stars. As for whether the first-generation ghost blade was a divine artifact or not, Dustless did not know. However, there were countless rumors about the first-generation ghost blade. There were even rumors that the first-generation ghost blade was a weapon that could destroy the world. Even if it was not a divine artifact, it would not be too far off. It's just a weapon. If it's destroyed, then so be it. I have plenty of such things. Dustless casually said. His expression made him look like a nouveau riche. He lacked everything, but he didn't lack weapons. There were countless heaven-defying weapons in the king's treasure. Even if the first-generation ghost blade was destroyed, Dustless would not care. After all, he still had the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword to accompany him. Plenty? Tian Songyun was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He was so angry that he almost choked to death. It was true that he had plenty of weapons, but not everyone had a pile of abilities like him. Divine artifacts of all kinds were as common as sand. This guy isn't purposely attacking her, is he? Erica and Liliana looked at each other with bitter smiles. Their eyes were also staring at the first-generation ghost blade in Dustless's hand. The evil that wanted to destroy the world was definitely not a joke. Even hundreds of meters away, they felt as if they had fallen into hell. "Brat, don't be too proud," Tian Songyun roared. He forcefully endured the anger of having his Tian Songyun sword destroyed. He raised his hand and a blood-red light shot towards Dustless. There was a flaw in his precious weapon. He really wanted to kill. Although swordsmanship is not my forte, but a powerful spiritual pressure erupted from his body. Dustless stared at the incoming attack. He also slashed out an even more majestic sword pressure. Gathering spiritual pressure on the blade and using all my strength to release it, I can still do such a simple thing. Ka ka ka. The earth was like a piece of paper, and the tyrannical slash tore it apart. It was easier than cutting vegetables, and a crack several meters deep was directly cut into the ground. This guy actually knows how to use a sword. Not to mention his swordsmanship is incredible. Erica and Liliana were both surprised. It was the first time they had seen Dustless use a sword, so they were quite surprised. Incredible? Dustless was a little proud. He had never learned swordsmanship, but the enemies he had fought before were as many swordsmanship masters as carps crossing the river. For example, Hawkeye in One Piece, Baldy Gorosei, Captain Yamamoto in Shinigami, and Aizen. Their swordsmanship was actually not bad. Over time, Dustless imitated them. Unknowingly, his swordsmanship also caught up. It was just that he didn't notice it. Pucci. Dustless's slash easily tore apart Tian Songyun's light, but its power was greatly reduced. However, its momentum did not decrease. Wherever it went, a hideous crack would flash. I might die if I'm not careful. Tian Songyun was sweating and his heart was cold. He vaguely saw the Grim Reaper with a scythe. Chapter 1480. Tian Songyun's worries were not unfounded. The incoming slash gave off a loud boom and the Soul World, which was originally filled with clouds and mist, was affected. Even the weather started to change. The mist receded and was replaced by the setting sun. It was desolate. Leaves were falling and the wind was howling. It felt like the end of the world. No, this guy doesn't dare to kill me. Suddenly realizing that he was currently occupying Huina's body in the clear autumn courtyard, Tian Songyun relaxed. Although his methods were despicable and were despised by others, surviving was more important than anything else. Kill me if you have the guts. Tian Songyun displayed his shameless abilities. His mocking voice was filled with arrogance and disdain. Kill me if you have the guts, and your little lover will die as well. However, there was a saying that one would not die if one did not seek death. If one sought death, especially in front of someone stronger than oneself, then one would definitely die. I didn't plan to kill you, but humans were fickle. At first, Dustless only wanted to teach him a lesson and warn Tian Songyun not to occupy Huina's body in the clear autumn courtyard. However, there were some arrogant people in the world. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. With an evil smile, Dustless swung the first-generation ghost blade again. A huge slash appeared. Its scale and power were even greater than before. Boom boom boom. The power of the two slashes overlapped, and the power immediately changed. It was magnified by several times and the aftershock was unstoppable. The innocent ground was instantly covered in blood as if it was being torn apart by gravity. The shocking cracks made one feel despair. Even the sky was covered by the flashes of the slashes. Nothing was worth mentioning. I'm really done for this time. Tian Songyun's heart turned cold. He did not expect Dustless to be so ruthless. His attitude changed faster than flipping a book. He wanted to kill him and he did not care about his feelings at all. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. After all, he was a god. Tian Songyun would not just wait for death. Even a dog would jump over a wall when it was forced into a corner. Moreover, he was a true god. Swish swish swish. The heavenly sword of gathering clouds was swung a few times, and several streaks of cold light filled with murderous intent shot out. Being forced into a dead end, Tian Songyun decisively chose to drag Dustless down with him. He had used up all of his strength in these few slashes, trying to forcefully tear apart the world-exterminating light. Pucci. Dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. The moment the Heaven Cluster Cloud Sword's attack came into contact with Dustless's attack, it crumbled in the blink of an eye. There was no comparison at all. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Chapter 1481. In any case, destroying the Kusanagi sword was not a big deal. Authority was not that important. For example, Dustless's glint fruit could also be compressed into the Kusanagi sword. How dare this guy? Not only was Tian Songyun shocked, but Liliana and Erica were also petrified. Although they did not know the consequences of Dustless' actions, they were shocked by Dustless' attitude of not caring about divine tools and authority. For example, Marquis Warban had a fanatical pursuit of authority. He did not even hesitate to use rituals to summon disobedient gods. The other gods' lairs were the same. They had a morbid obsession with authority. And now, Dustless wanted to destroy the Kusanagi sword. Tian Songyun wanted to skin him alive. This was blatant contempt and a slap in the face. I don't believe it. Tian Songyun clenched his teeth. He still felt that Dustless was tricking him. As long as his consciousness dissipated, This guy would definitely shamelessly put away the Kusanagi sword. Then I'll open your eyes. It's just a broken sword. Divine tool my ass. Dustless curled his lips. The others were speechless. This guy's head must have been caught by a door. The so-called divine tool became worthless after coming out of his mouth. Under the gazes of Tian Songyun, Liliana, and Erika, the sharpness of the truth-seeking jade gradually approached the Kusanagi sword. Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka. The black and sharp blade could not withstand the sharpness of the truth-seeking jade. After a short stalemate, it gradually began to peel off, shattering into pieces all over the ground. It really shattered? The three pairs of eyes stared unblinkingly. They could not help but cry out in shock. This guy needs to be taught a lesson. Such a prodigal behavior must be confined. This is not money. He can earn it back if he loses it. What does he think authority is? Erika, who woke up from her shock, stomped her feet. She had been in a daze just now. She only woke up when the Kusanagi sword completely shattered and disappeared. However, it was already too late. The Kusanagi sword would not return. Indeed, it needs to be properly disciplined. That's a divine artifact, not some scrap metal. Liliana nodded in agreement. The destruction of the sky-gathering cloud sword meant that Dustless had given up on this authority. There's nothing to be concerned about. Authority is dispensable to me. Dustless smiled. When he had no power, he had still killed Welslana and Mekalto and Marquis Warban as well. In short, there was no rule stating that the slaying god did not require any so-called authority. Why hasn't he awakened yet? Looking at Hui Na of the clear autumn courtyard, who had fallen to the ground, Dustless frowned slightly. He quickly walked over and saw that the young girl's expression was somewhat pale. Do I need to do CPR? Dustless's appetite was aroused as he stared at those delicate red lips that were like a blooming rose. He would be an idiot if he didn't take advantage of the situation. Moreover, Grace of Clear Autumn Courtyard had already fainted. Aiming at Hui Na's mouth, Dustless was about to press his lips on it when Erika's ear-piercing voice rang out like a resentful woman. Are you going to turn into a weird uncle? These words made Dustless stop as if he had been electrocuted. He rolled his eyes at Erika in annoyance and finally gave up on the idea of taking advantage of the situation. Just as he was about to let Erika do CPR for him, Dustless suddenly felt that his lips were both hot and cold. It was soft as if something was blocking his mouth. He widened his eyes and saw that it was the shy Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard. King, thank you for saving me. Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard had two cute little dimples on her face. Her cheeks were red as if she was drunk. How do you plan to compensate her for that sky-gathering cloud sword? That's a divine artifact. Seeing that Dustless and Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard were glued to each other like honey, Erika was furious. She deliberately emphasized the word, divine artifact. Liliana also looked like she was watching a good show. The preciousness of the Kusanagi sword was self-evident. This is indeed a headache. Dustless frowned and was in a dilemma for a moment. He had countless abilities and could barely use them all, but it was impossible for him to give them to others. Moreover, he didn't have the technology to forge weapons. As a knight, how could Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard not have a sword? By the way, his eyes lit up and fell on the slender blade of the first-generation ghost blade. Dustless smiled and said, If you don't mind, my Tachi will be yours in the future. King, are you sure? Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was dizzy and shocked. This long blade was filled with an ancient aura. It was obviously not an ordinary item. The Tachi was not unsheathed for the time being, but the evil aura it emitted was enough to make people's scalp tingle and tremble with fear. Of course. Dustless casually handed the first-generation ghost blade to Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard and said awkwardly, I used too much strength just now and accidentally broke the Kusanagi sword. Sorry. Erika and Liliana secretly cursed the great swindler. The two of them had seen Dustless destroy the Kusanagi sword with their own eyes. However, the two of them were slightly touched by his magnanimity. Most god slayers treated their subordinates as chess pieces. Liliana deeply understood this. She used to be Marquis Oben's chess piece. If he had a super divine weapon like the first-generation ghost blade, Marquis Oben would probably sleep with it in his arms, not to mention giving it away. However, the first-generation ghost blade is a little difficult to control. This weapon is very evil, Dustless said solemnly. The first-generation ghost blade's previous owners had all died unnatural deaths. We can all see that this is a powerful demonic blade, but it suits me very well. Clear autumn courtyard Huey's eyes were like torches, and the first-generation Gui Che's unbelievably strong evil chi was daunting. Facing this long blade required a great deal of courage, so taming it was even more difficult. However, Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was very interested. As a swordsman, she was most interested in swords. Chapter 1482. Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's eyes were filled with starlight, and the smile on her face was hard to hide. Her eyes were narrowed into crescent moons. Just as she was about to communicate with Dustless, she found that he had disappeared. A woman's perception is still sharp. Dustless's mouth twitched wildly. Erica immediately noticed Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's intentions and pulled Dustless away from her at an incredible speed. Her speed was so fast that even Dustless was stunned for a moment. Good blade. After observing for a while, Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui nodded and stroked the first-generation Ghost Blade's simple blade. It would let out a burst of cold screams, giving people the illusion of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Not only that, the first-generation Ghost Blade's surface also erupted with a demonic light to resist Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui. This blade is the first-generation Ghost Blade, an out-and-out demonic blade. It can rival and even surpass your heaven-gathering cloud sword. It will take time to tame it, so take it slow. Dustless cautioned. The first-generation Ghost Blade was snatched from the 5 honored stars. He had no problem controlling it, but ordinary people would die tragically if they encountered the first-generation Ghost Blade. However, at this moment, Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui seemed to be possessed. She turned a deaf ear to Dustless's words and stroked the first-generation Ghost Blade back and forth like a sun closer than her own sun. Buzz buzz buzz. The first-generation Ghost Blade let out a burst of clear cries and a large demonic light, continuing to resist Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's touch. After all, it had only one master, Dustless. Good blade. The more the first-generation Ghost Blade resisted, the more pleased Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui became. The divine blade had a spirit. For the first-generation Ghost Blade to be so human-like, it indirectly showed that it was not a fish in a pond. Its surging demonic power was abnormal to the extreme. Compared to Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's heaven-gathering cloud sword, the first-generation Ghost Blade was obviously more difficult to control. After all, this was a demonic blade, an evil existence that could rival the heaven-gathering cloud sword. It was not easy to control it. Let's go back for now. Dustless patted Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's shoulder. Since first-generation Gui Che had gifted it to Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui Na, Dustless wouldn't ask for it back. He had too many weapons in his possession, and the number of swords and blades was even greater. For example, Captain Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka, is currently under the control of Dustless. Moreover, after the first time, Terumi Kayamoto is also one of his own people, so this deal is not a loss for him. How generous of you, Erica said in a sour tone. Although Liliana did not say anything, her eyes were full of resentment. The two women were so jealous that the smell of vinegar was everywhere. She and Erica had been admiring Dustless for far longer than Hui Na of the Blue Autumn Courtyard, but they had not received a single valuable gift. Cough, cough, cough. Dustless was embarrassed. Sometimes it was difficult to be impartial. Time to go back. As if nothing had happened just now, Erica's smile was as beautiful as a spring breeze. She wasn't an unreasonable person, so after complaining for a while, she felt relieved. It was Dustless's fault for destroying someone else's artifact. That's true. Dustless nodded slightly, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He hoped that Métis did not do anything to Athena. In Shizuka Kuzunagi's house. As usual, everyone went to work and school. But the room that was usually warm was now cold and piercing, and filled with a different kind of oppression. Where did Athena go? The girl asked in a cold and arrogant tone. She was sitting on the sofa, looking down at the two people opposite her with a slight smile on her face. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kuzunagi, who were tied up, were terrified. After Athena pledged her allegiance to Dustless, her relationship with the other girls was pretty good. This Athena was different from the previous Athena. She was cold, like an evil spirit running out of hell, and her whole body was filled with a bone-piercing chill. This person was Métis. I don't know. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kuzunagi gritted their teeth. Ah. As expected of that guy's companion. Your sincere feelings are admirable, but you two are still young. Haven't you lived long enough? Do you still miss this beautiful world? If you refuse to answer me, you will die. Métis used both kindness and power, and at the same time released his divine power. It's so cold. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kuzunagi shivered. Both of them were ordinary humans. Although Wanli Yoli was a witch, she was not suitable for fighting, so she could not resist Métis's power. Boom boom boom. At this moment, there was a sudden explosion in the room, followed by a ray of warm light that shone on Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusanagi. The two girls felt better. Athena? Métis raised his head and found that the room was penetrated, and a face came into view. You came at the right time. It's time for us to become one. Without saying much, Métis's eyes were filled with ambition. This was the best opportunity. If Dustless came back, he would have to retreat again. You want to use them to threaten me? You are getting more and more despicable. Athena was expressionless, as if she was talking about something insignificant. However, deep in her eyes, there was a flash of disappointment and loneliness. Threaten? What a joke. As a god, why would I threaten you with mere humans? Don't compare me with those scumbags. Métis showed a disapproving look. Although her heart was distorted by the flames of revenge, there were some things that she had her bottom line. This time she was only looking for Athena to fight. After dealing with Athena and recovering to her peak, she would look for Dustless to settle the score. As for the matter of devouring the sky and destroying the world, she suddenly felt that it was not important. She had to get rid of Dustless as soon as possible. Otherwise, sooner or later she would be traumatized. Chapter 1483. Athena stared at Mortis with a complicated gaze. To be honest, she really did not want to fight with Mortis. After all, their relationship was understandable. After we become one, I will settle the score with your lover. Mortis gritted his teeth. He did not have a good impression of Dustless and could only blame him. A good plan had been ruined by that cheater. You want to deal with him? Athena's eyebrows relaxed. After hearing Mortis's true intention, Athena calmed down. The situation was one-sided anyway. It doesn't matter if you devour him. Athena suddenly smiled. Although it's a little troublesome, the result is the same. I'm still the same person. You? Hearing this, Mortis's mouth twitched violently. What Athena meant was, even if you devour me, you will still be turned over by Dustless. Let them go first. Athena pointed at Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusanagi. Let them go, and I'll be willing to be devoured by you. Mortis's eyes were filled with killing intent. When he heard Athena's words, he did not feel happy. Instead, his anger surged. Athena was clearly looking down on him. Athena wanted to express that no matter what happened in the end, the winner would be Dustless. Even if she was devoured now, it would not be an exception. Disappear before I change my mind. Athena glanced at Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusanagi coldly. Looking at Mortis's ferocious expression, she was quite upset by Athena's words. His twisted face was even scarier, and his body was filled with deadly pressure. But what about you? Wanli Yoli looked at Athena worriedly. She was still fine, but Shizuka Kusanagi had already fainted. Being in close contact with a god, Wanli Yoli was barely better, but Shizuka Kusanagi had already fainted. Don't you trust that guy? Athena asked calmly, her eyes shining with a strange light. At first, Athena did not intend to be devoured by Mortis. When the two of them fought, Athena was naturally not afraid of Mortis. However, she soon changed her mind. To be honest, I also want to see how strong he is. That guy was very powerful. He was not a god, but it was impossible to say that he was a human. When did humans become so powerful? He is a god slayer, but he never uses the power of a god. The gods that he has defeated so far have all relied on his own strength. Athena said expectantly. In other words, you want to use me? Métis felt as if he had just swallowed a fly. Even though Athena was willing to be devoured and she was happy about it, Métis could not hurt her like this. He was using Mortis as a tool to fight with Dustless. According to Dustless's personality, he would definitely rescue Athena in the end, and she would be fine. On the other hand, Métis was destined for tragedy. Don't regret it. After glaring fiercely at Athena, Métis finally pounced over and violently covered Athena's mouth. There was no doubt that he wanted to devour her. Damn it, even if you are a traitor, you can't do this. Dustless, who was in the dark, was speechless. He was watching every move of Athena and Métis. Towards this pair of mother and daughter who were in cahoots with each other, an unrealistic thought in his heart became more and more impulsive. Let's wait and see. Dustless leaned against the wall leisurely, quietly waiting for the two to merge. Killing Métis would be too easy for the two of you. Athena is my servant, so her mother will also become my servant. This mother-daughter combination is very good. Dustless was secretly pleased with himself as the corner of his mouth curled up in a sinister arc. You two idiots, actually, I can't wait for you to do this. He glanced back at Métis, who was gradually merging into one. The unbelievably huge divine power swept through the world, and the cloudless blue sky dimmed. It was replaced by a cold darkness. Athena was gradually disappearing, and a brand new Métis was slowly forming. Even though he could interfere with their happy occasion, Dustless wisely chose to ignore it. I've always wanted to add Métis to my servant team, but I didn't have a good opportunity. This time you've helped me, Athena? Dustless's sinister smile became even more pronounced. There was no reason for him to keep Métis like a bandit. It was obviously impossible for him to be a servant who could do anything he wanted. There was no suitable excuse. However, it was different now. Métis had recovered to his peak and would definitely come to take revenge on Dustless. After defeating her, Athena would also be speechless if he kept her by his side. Athena had no right to interfere with how the victor would be captured. As it finally stopped, Dustless looked up slightly and realized that the huge commotion had suddenly stopped. He looked up and saw that the two figures had completely disappeared. Are you still sneaking around there? Dustless. A majestic roar entered his ears. Dustless frowned slightly and looked over. Métis, who had recovered to his peak, was staring at him arrogantly. No wonder you're so arrogant and confident. This form is indeed very strong. Dustless nodded slightly. Before Métis had merged with Athena, he couldn't detect his presence. After the two of them merged, he immediately ascended to the sky and discovered Dustless hiding in the dark as if he had eyes in the sky. TSK. You've become stronger, but your tolerance has become smaller. Don't come and kill me, I'm so scared. Although he said that, Dustless's face was full of provocation. He curled his finger and looked at Métis with an expression that said, come and hit me if you dare. It was extremely annoying. Chapter 1484. Mortis was covered in a layer of black fog. She gritted her teeth and glared at this starred. She cursed in her heart, don't be so cocky. Will you die? Cut the crap. I want to see how strong you are. It was rare for Mortis to talk nonsense. Her bickering skills were too weak. Even if 100 of her joined forces, they would not be a match for Dustless. Boom, boom, boom. Black light exploded and a tornado swept over. Dustless frowned. He was as calm as a rock as he stared at the wind and waves in front of him. The black tornado was quite powerful. It destroyed all the surrounding buildings. A trick to please the crowd. Dustless shook his head in disdain. He completely ignored the existence of the black tornado. Although it was powerful, it was just a trick to him. The tornado crushed Dustless's body, but it would heal again. It was useless. His expression did not change, and he continued to stare at Athena with a contemptuous look. Be my servant. Dustless stroked his chin and smiled. Métis's eyes were spitting fire as she glared at Wu Chen. Her face was bright red. She was about to explode from Wu Chen's words. Who was she? Mortis. She was a true god. Although Dustless was a god slayer, he was still a human. At most, he was a slightly stronger human. You want me to be your servant? Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning when you're talking? Mortis's spittle flew all over the place as he cursed in his heart. In anger, she waved her slender hand gently. The giant pythons in the sky poured down. Their bloody mouths were locked on Dustless. If they were not careful, they would be torn apart. I will be struck by lightning? Who dares to strike me? Hearing this, Dustless didn't get angry. His tone was calm and indifferent. Although he wasn't a god and didn't have the so-called godhead, after experiencing several worlds in succession, countless gods had died in his hands. Even if he wasn't a god, Dustless's strength was far beyond that of a god. In his opinion, she should kneel down and be grateful that he was willing to let go of his means to recruit Mortis as his servant. The so-called god of disobedience, to put it bluntly, was nothing more than a stray dog. In Dustless's words, I was kind enough to give you a warm home. Not only are you not grateful, but you also want to tear down my home. How dare you? Boom boom boom. Dustless didn't dodge, so the pythons that filled the sky tore him to pieces, scattering his body parts all over the ground. If that's all you've got. I really don't understand why Athena thinks so highly of you. Métis raised his nose arrogantly, looking as if he was invincible. Swish, 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 swish. A sharp sound suddenly came from behind. Métis was shocked. The sky suddenly became abnormally hot, and the water and blood in her body evaporated at an accelerated rate. After a moment of shock, Métis instinctively retreated. Fast reaction. Chapter 1485. Métis panicked and realized the danger of the blade aura. Her heart skipped a beat and her blood flowed faster. Even her breathing became more and more difficult. Damn pervert, Métis cursed and decisively took a detour. Even though she felt a little aggrieved, what was a moment of humiliation compared to her life? Besides, she was just looking for a better and more suitable opportunity to take revenge on Dustless. Aren't you a god? Stepping on the void, Dustless chased while asking, if you keep dodging, let alone defeating me, you won't even be able to touch my body. Now you're like a mouse hiding from place to place. Hearing that, Métis was furious. She raised her hands and feet and black light surged. Brr, brr, brr. In an instant, countless giant pythons appeared, all of them opening their fangs and biting at Dustless. Their several 100-meter-long bodies made people feel despair when they moved. It's useless. Shaking his head slightly, Dustless faced it calmly. A large amount of golden flames flowed out of his body and quickly spread, covering his entire body in the blink of an eye. Zen Fire Tachi West, Broken Sun Prison Garment. The golden flames covered Dustless's entire body. The light was extremely dazzling, and the water in the atmosphere evaporated rapidly, giving people the illusion that he was advancing with the sun and was unstoppable. Brr, brr, brr. The thick black python that approached Dustless roared again. It was different from the valiant and arrogant cry just now. This time it was filled with endless sorrow. Before it came into contact with Dustless's body, the broken sun prison garment emitted flames of more than 15 million degrees that evaporated everything. Damn it! How can I fight like this? Seeing that, the corner of Métis's mouth twitched violently. A sense of sorrow spread throughout her body. She had a splitting headache and she couldn't help but exclaim in her heart, where did this guy come from? The temperature of 15 million degrees Celsius was enough to crush everything. Any attack would be reduced to ashes under this terrifying temperature. Métis calmed herself down and counted the moves Dustless had used so far. She couldn't help but feel conflicted. Even the god of disobedience didn't seem to have as many abilities as he did. Including all things in the world, there were too many to count. He often gave people the misconception that there was nothing he couldn't do. Right, let me see what makes you different from the rest. She narrowed her eyes. Since Métis had devoured Athena, he could naturally use her abilities as well. Now the two of them were one. In fact, the current Métis was even stronger than Athena. The most intelligent goddess of wisdom, Métis, Athena, had the ability to see through the other party's personality and divine power. Therefore, everything about Dustless in the past was exposed in front of Mortis. At this moment, the situation was stronger than her, and she had no choice but to bow down. She didn't have the strength to shake Dustless at the moment, and it seemed that she could only follow the arrangement. Chapter 1486. A sense of helplessness welled up in Mortis' heart. She was physically and mentally exhausted. She gritted her teeth and locked onto Dustless. Changing sides at the last minute? She was naturally unwilling. As a god, it was a great humiliation to be Dustless's servant. She would definitely be disgraced in the future. Especially when she saw Dustless's oily eyes, Mortis felt a chill run down her spine. Combined with the evil smile on his face, it was hard for her not to think wrongly. I want to perish together with you. Half a day later, Mortis gave a ridiculous answer. Your bravery is commendable, but with all due respect, can you do it? Dustless's voice was very soft, but there was a shadow that was hard to get rid of. When it landed on Mortis' ears, it was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. The idea of perishing together was very good, but the key question was, could she do it? Mortis already knew that Dustless had a resurrection ability that was not inferior to his. No matter what kind of injury he suffered, he would recover. Other than that, there was another ability that would recover no matter what kind of physical attack he received, elemental transformation. No matter how she calculated, the scale of victory was one-sided. Mortis was a god and her opponent was not easy to deal with. He had an advantage over Mortis in all aspects. Is there no other way? Mortis asked speechlessly. Reality is so cruel, Dustless replied with a smile. His voice was light and full of confidence. Mortis frowned and snorted. How can it be so easy? Even if I die, I will skin you alive. At most, we will all die together. Your mouth is quite vicious and your eyes are not bad either. Wu Qin pondered as she sized up Mortis. Her plain eyes were somewhat surprised. She didn't seem to have any deep hatred with Mortis. This guy's resentful expression made people feel pain in the ass. You know that you have no chance of winning, but you still want to continue. What a boring woman. Dustless sighed and put on an expression as if he was the savior of the world. How about this, let's play a game. If you can force me to retreat within 3 moves, you win. How about that? What can I get? Métis asked. Compared to this kind of boring game, she was more interested in the spoils of war. If you win, you can do whatever you want with me, Dustless said bluntly, but if you lose, you have to be my servant. Kik. When he said the best, it was a sinister laugh that made people feel uneasy. This bastard, Métis's eyes were spewing fire. Dustless's gaze made her extremely unhappy. It was as if she was a fish waiting to be slaughtered. Dustless, on the other hand, was sharpening his blade. You don't dare to bet? Dustless sneered. The so-called god is nothing more than this. You think I'm afraid of you? In the end, Mortis gritted his teeth and agreed. No problem. Don't be too embarrassed if you lose. However, there's a condition. Chapter 1487. Métis was helpless. She realized that she was miserable and weak. She could only be slaughtered by Dustless. There was nothing she could do. She was powerless to deal with the countless trump cards that he had. Seeing that Métis was motionless, Dustless's figure flashed and appeared behind Métis. If you don't move, then I'll take the initiative. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The sharp edge of the tragic fire tachi swept out. Don't underestimate me. Although Métis was not as good as Dustless, she was still a real god. She immediately controlled the black side to strike back. Boom boom boom. A huge roar spread from the sky. A visible energy ripple evaporated the surrounding area for thousands of meters. The remaining oxygen in the endless atmosphere was all evaporated and annihilated by the invincible heat of the tragic fire tachi. The surrounding area was filled with suffocating danger. This damn monster. The heavens must be blind to let such a person live. What a failure. Métis complained in her heart. She dealt with Dustless with all her strength, but she was still almost sent flying by the terrifying force. Now, even if she could barely withstand Dustless's attack, due to the temperature of the tragic fire tachi, her weapon was peeling off layer by layer. Not only the weapon but the entire world seemed to be in a huge steamer basket. Everything in the world began to evaporate and collapse. An unprecedented sense of crisis filled the air. I've always been wrong. Kanjima stared blankly at the 2 people in the sky. He had always thought that the one who would destroy Japan was the god of disobedience. Now he suddenly realized that he was very wrong. Other than the god of disobedience, there was another person who could easily destroy Japan. He was even more dangerous than the god of disobedience, and he had already begun to do so. The god slayer, Dustless. Motherf *Ker, I invited you here to protect Japan, not to destroy it. Our Japan can't withstand such violence. Bastard. However, only Kanjima heard these words. He could not muster up the courage to say such arrogant words to Dustless. You still have one last chance, Miss Métis? Dustless had an unconcealable smile on his face. He had already made up his mind to test Mortis after this duel. As for servants, other services were also within the scope of this rule. Hearing this, the corner of Mortis's mouth twitched. He regretted agreeing to Dustless's conditions. Who was she? Métis. He also had a special identity that stood out from the masses. Although Métis had been devoured by Zeus, she was undoubtedly his first wife. From Dustless's crazy eyes, Métis caught a different meaning. This guy wants me so much. Could it be that he wants to make Zeus a cuckold? When this unbelievable thought appeared in her mind, Métis was also shocked. But for some reason she felt the pleasure of taking revenge on Zeus. Compared to the sky that devoured Zeus, Métis preferred this more extreme method of revenge. If Zeus knew that he had been cuckolded, he might be angered half to death. Moreover, looking at it carefully, Dustless was stronger than Zeus in all aspects. First of all, in terms of strength, Dustless, who had destroyed several worlds in succession, was definitely not weaker than Zeus. Furthermore, his appearance was completely superior to that rotten old man. Thinking of this, Métis's eyes slowly changed. Her eyes were like spring water as she looked at Dustless shyly. Damn it. How could I have such dirty thoughts? I'm a god. Although this guy is also equivalent to a god, I definitely can't have an affair with him. Shaking her head hard, Métis was shocked by her own thoughts. However, in such a short period of time, Mortis had already lost everything. Immortal art, bright god gate. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Suddenly, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air came from the depths of the sky. Gulp. Métis instantly shivered and looked up instinctively. She saw countless mahogany falling from the sky. There were so many of them that it was dazzling. I can't get hit. Métis's eyes were filled with fear. She could only admit defeat when facing a pervert like Dustless. Therefore, she abandoned her position without any principles and turned to run. How fast can you be? Can you outrun light? The next second after Métis turned to run, Dustless blocked her path. Not only that, but she was also faced with a snake-like chain. Heaven lock. The chains looked harmless, but Métis's face turned pale. She had learned from Athena that these chains were not ordinary goods. Once caught by it, she would never be able to escape Dustless's nightmares. Get out of my way. Forced to a dead end, Métis's ferocious nature was unleashed. She waved her sickle and slashed forward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The purplish-black demonic light pounced toward heaven, trying to defeat him. Dream on. Dustless was indifferent. However, his calm eyes were once again filled with turbulent waves. Divine might. Ka-ka-ka. The void suddenly cracked, and a black hole gradually enlarged, expanding its territory like a whale swallowing a whale. Gulp. Métis's slash that gave her hope sank into the dark divine might and stopped moving. Ouch. Métis exclaimed. She suddenly felt some pain on her wrist. She looked over instinctively and saw that it was the heaven lock that had locked her. Damn it. Métis cursed. She struggled with all her might, but it was useless. She couldn't break free from the heaven lock at all. Moreover, the mahogany in the void came crashing down. Boom boom boom. Métis was forcefully suppressed. Together with the heaven lock, she was smashed to the ground. The ground kept shaking for a minute before stopping. Chapter 1488. The situation changed in an instant. The arrogant Métis was suppressed, and the mahogany that filled the sky occupied the ground. The land within a 1-kilometer radius was affected and turned into a barren, scorched land. The land within a 10-kilometer radius was not much better. It was a mess like a natural disaster, and shocking cracks appeared. Yo 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 yo, an extremely smug laughter descended from the sky, and then the sky was suddenly covered. Métis, who was suppressed by the divine spell, bright god gate, raised her head instinctively. Dustless stood in front of her with an overbearing aura. Even the sky was dim due to his imposing figure. Miss Métis. Grabbing Métis' chin, Dustless touched it twice. It was smooth and soft to the touch like silk. Glaring at Dustless, Métis warned fiercely, "Take your claws away or I'll bite your hand off." Her eyeballs were about to fall out. Even though she was Dustless's captive, she did not maintain the attitude of a goddess. She was domineering, full of dignity, and disdained to be associated with mortals. However, she did not know that this arrogant look would instead arouse Dustless's interest. Bite me. Dustless put his hand next to Métis' mouth and said with a smile. Métis' eyes widened, and her ferocious nature erupted. She instinctively thought that Dustless was looking down on her. Just when she opened her mouth to defend her dignity as a goddess, Dustless words forced her to close her mouth. If you're a dog that likes to bite people, feel free to do so. Dustless shook the thumb of his right hand and smiled. You're the one. Métis retracted her gaze. You're really stubborn. A mischievous look flashed across Dustless's brows. Just when he was about to teach Métis a lesson, he suddenly felt a gust of wind behind him. Ripples spread out in the void, and the air was filled with a destructive aura. Realizing the danger, he decisively used a counterattack. Binding Dao, 81, sky-shattering. A barrier as thin as a cicada's wing formed in the blue void. Ka-ka-ka. However, this air wave that came out of nowhere was too terrifying and powerful. The sky breaker, that had just appeared, did not last for long, and its surface was covered with cracks like a spider web. Ha ha, your enemy is here. Mortis laughed heartily as he stared at Dustless, trying to find a hint of depression on his face. The one who should be worried is you, Métis. Dustless glanced at her and said calmly, My enemies are only two kinds of people. One is the god of disobedience, and the other is the god of disobedience. I don't think I need to tell you what it is. Hearing this, Mortis's smile changed slightly, and his expression turned gloomy. Other than the god of disobedience, only the god of disobedience could oppose a god slayer of the same level. Dustless would capture a god slayer as a servant out of boredom, but the other god slayers had no interest in that. I agree to be your servant. In the face of life and death, Mortis decisively abandoned his position. Idiot, do you really think it's a good thing to take me in as a servant? That means endless trouble. Mortis sneered in his heart. Other than a weirdo like Dustless to a god-slayer, the god of disobedience was a delicious cake. No matter which god-slayer met the god of disobedience, the two would fight. The god of disobedience was nourishment for the god-slayer. Just as Mortis was hoping that Dustless and this mysterious god-slayer would fight, there was a fluctuation in the sky, and then a sudden sentence made Mortis vomit blood. TSK. As expected of my disciple, you actually tamed the god of disobedience as a servant. The sound of nature was like an oriole flying out of the valley, gentle and melodious. This is simply, Mortis gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He hoped that Dustless and the god-slayer would fight. Now, he had become the golden signboard for Dustless to make a name for himself. Mortis's eyes rolled back and he fainted from anger. Long time no see. Dustless turned and revealed a gentle smile. The person in front of him was devastatingly beautiful. She was wearing a white traditional Chinese dress, and her delicate face was as exquisite as jade. There was no flaw to be found. When you see Master, you must use honorifics. The heavenly beauty glared at Dustless and immediately frowned. The god of disobedience is the cornerstone for the god-slayer to become stronger. It is a little extravagant to take her as a servant. It is a waste of her authority. Your personality hasn't changed at all. You are still as narcissistic as before, Dustless muttered. This person was sect leader Luo Hao. This is not narcissism. I am your master. As an existence at the top of the martial artist pyramid, Luo Hao's ears were sharp. She heard Dustless's ridicule clearly, and she immediately glared at him. Killing Mortis is actually a loss. Taming her is worth it. Dustless smiled. Martial arts could drive enemies away and he could even sleep with her. She was simply a perfect lover bestowed by the heavens. Why are you looking for me? Dustless asked. Luo Hao lived in seclusion. Unless there was something, she would never leave Mount Lu. You are too unreasonable. I am your master after all. It is only right for me to visit my obedient disciple. Luo Hao had an expression of, I am here to visit you. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head. He would not fall for this and Luo Hao would not be so bored. Could it be that god of disobedience Monkey King? Suddenly thinking of the Monkey King of disobedience who was imprisoned in the Western Heaven Palace, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding. However, this might be a good opportunity. I can use this opportunity to get rid of all the god-slayers in the world. Those self-righteous people are too troublesome. It was hard to imagine what kind of existence could defeat Angela with her. You've been reduced to such a miserable state, yet you're still so stubborn. It's comparable to your thick scales. A male voice said. His tone sounded very noble. This person was wearing a black tuxedo, a mask on his face and a gun in his hand. He was very calm. Facing the giant body of the god ancestor Angela, he was very calm. She was the American god slayer, John Plato Smith. Then I'll die with you. You won't be able to escape unscathed. A strange smile appeared on the snake head. The god ancestor Angela's smile was very crazy and ferocious. With just you. John Plato Smith curled his lips in disdain. Although he didn't directly mock her, anyone could hear the deep disdain in his tone. This was naked and direct disdain. Humph, I hope you can continue to be so carefree later. The god ancestor Angela cursed fiercely. You won't even have a corpse left. It's useless to talk. Just come at me. John Plato Smith waved his hand and said calmly. Ah! Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the mouth of the god ancestor Angela. An indescribable sense of danger suddenly descended. However, the surroundings were as quiet as still water. There was no change. Only the god ancestor Angela's body expanded. Could it be that this guy wants to? John Plato Smith's expression didn't change, but his tone changed. She smelled a strong sense of danger. An inexplicable voice in her heart warned her to be careful. She couldn't help but take a few steps back and calmly looked at the god ancestor Angela. Wanna run? No way. You still. The god ancestor Angela laughed crazily. The masked Superman over there as well as this scary snake, stop right now. This is my territory. Stop fighting immediately. Before he finished speaking, the god ancestor Angela was interrupted by an unexpected voice. John Pluto Smith and the god ancestor Angela were both stunned. They turned their heads and saw 5 tiny shadows rushing over. Masked Superman? The corner of John Pluto Smith's mouth twitched. He retorted angrily, "Don't call me by such a vulgar name. My name is John Pluto Smith. If I say you're a masked Superman, then you're a masked Superman. Don't quibble." Dustless, who was rushing over, curled his lips. He was holding a gun and wearing a mask that looked like Ultraman. If he wasn't a masked Superman, then what was he? Of course, Dustless's gaze fell on the god ancestor Angela. Wasn't this guy the tool that Luohao said needed to unlock one of the seals of the ape god? Chapter 1491. John Pluto Smith frowned. Seeing Dustless staring at Angela, she felt like she was being looked down upon or even ignored. After giving Dustless a fierce glare, her eyes fell on Dustless's followers. These people don't seem to be ordinary. The blonde and silver-haired girls are not simple. Especially the 2 girls who look almost the same, they are even weirder. John Pluto Smith's eyes darkened. If someone could see her face clearly under the mask, they would find a delicate face. As well as that cautious expression on his face. He should be an East Asian without a doubt, but who is this guy? He's not Luohao. After staring at Dustless for a while, John Pluto Smith frowned and said. His eyes were faintly fixed on Métis and Athena. He knew that there was something wrong with these 2 little girls. Especially the little girl in the black coat, Métis. She gave John Pluto Smith a very dangerous and evil feeling. "Who are you?" God Ancestor Angela asked in a deep voice. "My lord, there shouldn't be any grudges between us. If you really want to take revenge." The snake eyes glanced at John Pluto Smith cunningly. Angela pointed at her and said, "Please go find that cunning god slayer." Bah! Upon hearing this, John Pluto Smith's face twitched. Although she was not afraid of Dustless and the others, she could not allow herself to be used as a tool by her mortal enemy Angela. "Don't talk nonsense. I don't know him and there is no grudge between us." John Pluto Smith snapped. Her tone was a little angry. "I'm not interested in where you 2 came from or why you are fighting. In short, there are only 2 choices in front of you." Dustless completely ignored the 2's verbal battle and said, "Fighting in my territory is an unforgivable crime. Either you submit to me or I'll send you to hell for free." After these words, the world fell silent for a few seconds. The sound of wind and water stopped and time seemed to stop. Everyone looked at Dustless in a daze. Erica, Liliana, Métis, and Athena were all in a daze, not to mention John Pluto Smith and Angela. "Am I dreaming?" After about a minute, John Pluto Smith muttered to herself. She pinched her right hand, and the intense pain made her grit her teeth. "Have you gone crazy? Do you know who I am? I'm John Pluto Smith, the Godslayer from America, and that guy is Angela, the boss of the Lord of the Flies. Remember who you are talking to before you sleep talk." John Pluto Smith shouted. He looked at Dustless with an unfriendly gaze. Clear baleful chi had already surfaced in his eyes. If it weren't for the fact that Wu Qin was outnumbered and had a mysterious background, he would have already charged over. And Angela was also full of murderous intent. She said coldly, "I want to tell you that this is the Pacific Ocean, the most vast ocean in the world. It doesn't belong to anyone. What you 2 are saying is bullshit." Chapter 1492. In the vast Pacific Ocean there was an island that stood out. The island was called Itagami Island. It was a man-made island made of resin, metal, and organic matter. It floated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was a city where humans and monsters coexisted. Seriously. In the secluded park, a young man with delicate features sighed and looked up at the sky. His bright eyes were dim at the moment, as if covered by a layer of mist, very blurred. "At least let me prepare before sending me to this world." Before Dustless could ask about transmigration, Linger, the incarnation of the system consciousness, impatiently threw him into this unfamiliar world. Of course it wasn't too unfamiliar. At least Dustless knew a thing or 2 about it. Itagami Island? Isn't this Akatsuki City's territory? Dustless looked around and thought to himself, but that kid doesn't seem to be in power yet. The so-called Akatsuki Empire hasn't been born yet. Grumble. Dustless heard a sound that made his balls ache. His stomach grumbled. He hadn't eaten for an entire day. The worst part was that he didn't have a single cent in his pocket. "Let's find something to eat first." Dustless got up and stretched his body. Just as he was about to leave, a series of hurried footsteps came from afar. A few black figures swarmed over. "Brat, give me your money." The blond young man with an arrogant expression roared, "You're really bold, aren't you? You dare to come out alone, especially in such a deserted place. Give me your money or I'll beat you to death. This brat is so fair and beautiful. He can't be a poor ghost, right? Don't worry, he's so handsome. We can sell him off. Haha." This group of gangsters surrounded Wu Qin so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. All of them laughed unscrupulously. In their eyes, Wu Qin was shining gold. "Alright, I forgot my job. How stupid." Dustless cursed in his heart and immediately shouted at them, "I'm in a very bad mood now. I'm also very hungry. If you don't want to be beaten up, quickly give me the money." Hearing this, the faces of the few people who were laughing suddenly froze as they looked at Dustless in shock. Is this guy crazy? There are 6 of us and this kid wants to rob us all by himself? The golden-haired young man who spoke before waved his hand and pointed at Dustless. He ordered his subordinates, "Beat this brat to death and teach him how to behave." As soon as he finished speaking, the golden-haired young man's group of dogs pounced on him. Lightspeed kick. For the next minute, the sound of punches and kicks did not stop. "Really, you bunch of poor bastards? You don't even have the money to feed yourselves. How are you going to feed your parents? They're all a bunch of scumbags." Dustless cursed as he walked. His eyes lit up as he rummaged through the wallets of these people. It was estimated that they could only afford a meal together. Perhaps they would have to sleep on the street again tonight. As for the group of scum they had met before, they had been beaten to a pulp by Dustless. Coo 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 coo. While counting the money, Dustless's stomach growled again. "Whatever, let's go eat first." Dustless quickened his pace. Just as he was about to leave the park and look for a restaurant to eat, a familiar figure blocked his path. "Little girl, move aside." Dustless frowned as he stared at the black-haired girl. "Don't call me little." The beautiful girl raised her eyebrows and put her hands on her hips. There was an inexplicable sense of majesty about her that made others feel respect for her. "She looks like Natsuki Nangong? No wonder I found her familiar." Dustless suddenly understood. The girl was wearing a gothic lowly outfit. She carried an umbrella and a lace fan. Her delicate appearance and petite figure made Dustless think of only one person, Natsuki Nangong. "Consider me unlucky," Dustless muttered to himself. He chose to take a detour. "Stop right there." Natsuki Nangong did not intend to let Dustless go. She asked, "Did you hear who made that huge explosion just now?" "Sorry, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you, but..." Dustless thought about his huge appetite. He knew that the money he robbed was not enough. He took the opportunity to rob her. "If you are willing to treat me to a meal, I don't mind telling you who did it." Natsuki Nangong was stunned. She looked at Dustless with surprise. Then she said with interest, "You are quite bold. You dare to bargain with me? We all have one head and 2 hands. Why wouldn't I dare?" Dustless looked at Natsuki Nangong and asked. In this world, only the true ancestors stood at the top of the pyramid. Moreover, there were very few of them. Including Koju, there were only 4 in the modern world. Dustless was not afraid of encountering a true ancestor. "Forget it. Tell me." Natsuki Nangong handed Dustless a wallet. She did not want to waste her breath. The huge explosion just now was not normal. She only wanted to know who the culprit was. The strength of the explosion was rare. Dustless took the wallet and turned to leave. He said without thinking, "It's just a small matter. Don't worry. A few idiots who overestimated their strength tried to rob me. However, they were too weak and I robbed them instead. There is no need to worry." "Brat, stop right there." Natsuki Nangong shouted after being stunned. Natsuki Nangong's mouth twitched. Her expression was gloomy. She cursed inwardly, "So you are the culprit. No wonder I did not find anyone else. How dare you cheat me of my money?" Chapter 1493. Nangong Na Yu showed her invincible might. Her tone and temperament were inexplicably majestic, which made Wu Qin stop in his tracks. He turned his head and looked at her in surprise. "Is there anything else?" Dustless asked. "Food is the most important thing to people. Delaying other people's meals is illegal." "Then I'll treat you to prison food right now." Nangong Natsuyu glared at Dustless and said impolitely. She grabbed Dustless's right hand and called the Special Regions Police Force. "Let go of me. Don't test my patience," Dustless said coldly with a hint of threat. "Or you'll regret it. You dare to force me? Interesting." Hearing this, Nangong Natsuyu was not afraid. Instead, she was very interested. she said provocatively. If you can make me let go of your hand, then I'll let bygones be bygones. Nangong Natsuyu grabbed Dustless even tighter. This guy's skin is so well maintained? His hand is so slippery. Nangong Natsuyu was surprised. Of course, it was only for a short moment. You forced me to do this. With a strange smile on his face, Wuqian opened his mouth and shouted, "Come and see, there's a female hooligan taking liberties with a man from a good family. Jivan." Dustless was about to attack Nangong Natsuyu when his mouth was sealed. You dare to spread rumors? I'll kill you. Nangong Natsuyu's face darkened. She suppressed the anger of wanting to swallow Dustless alive. She covered Dustless's mouth with one hand and warned fiercely, "You better not make a big deal out of a small matter." Oh. Dustless was not afraid of Nangong Natsuyu. He called out 2 more times. However, with his mouth sealed, no one could hear clearly what he was saying. But this was not important. Dustless's lion roar had attracted a lot of people. Hurry up and call the Special Regions Police Force. That little girl is so strong. She can't be a demon, right? Becoming a pervert at such a young age. Sigh, it's such a pity that you're in the prime of your life. 20 to 30 seconds later, a large group of passers-by heard the news. No matter which world it was, no creature could change their nature of gossip. The passers-by all talked about Natsuki Nangong. Dustless's mouth was covered by her hand, and she even grabbed his hand tightly. It was obvious who the victim was. Piff. Hearing those ear-piercing words, Nangong Nayu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She glared at Wuqian with fire in her eyes as if she was a scum. Nangong Nayu was furious. Today was the most unlucky day of her life. Not only had she been played by Dustless, she had also been cheated of her money. What made her collapse the most was that she had been treated as a pervert and a scumbag. Brat, you win. Nangong Natsuki finally chose to compromise and let go of Dustless's hands. Hee, you said you would let bygones be bygones. Don't go back on your words, young girl. Dustless showed a sly smile. Looking at Nangong Natsuki's red face, he swaggered away. What's your name? A cold voice came from behind him. My name is Dustless. Dustless said without turning his head. He didn't need to turn around to know it was Nangong Natsuki. Boom boom boom. A violent explosion suddenly swept across the area. A powerful shockwave came from the front, shattering all the windows. Due to the power of the shockwave, even the cars were sent flying. What is that? Dustless raised his eyebrows. He looked up and saw a glowing horse standing in the middle of the road. It was emitting a powerful aura. The shockwave just now came from it. It looks like a familiar beast. Dustless narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. Summoning a familiar beast in public and causing such a big commotion, he will definitely be arrested and interrogated. Not to mention he has a magician with him, Nangong Natsuki, who is also an instructor of the Special Regions Police Force. More and more people are provoking me today. Nangong Natsuki's tone was cold. She walked past Dustless and headed straight for the scene. It seems like she really didn't want to pursue Dustless. Brat, you're lucky this time. Don't let me see you again. Due to the urgency of the situation, Nangong Natsuki had to ignore Dustless for now. Leaving the familiar beast alone would cause more damage and the loss would be greater than facing Dustless alone. There was a voice in Nangong Natsuki's mind telling her that she will meet Dustless again one day. We will definitely meet again. Dustless shrugged and shook his head helplessly. This is Itagami Island. Nangong Natsuki is like a local snake. If he doesn't want to meet her, he will have to leave the island. Akatsuki Koju's Akatsuki Empire hasn't been born yet, so it's better to never come out. In order to not starve to death, I'll just call it Akatsuki Empire from now on. Wuqian smiled and muttered to himself. At the same time he followed Nangong Nayu. She looks familiar. The girl in the school uniform was holding a silver spear. She looked majestic, her watery eyes were bright, and combined with her cute face, it made people's eyes light up. In a trance, Wuqian thought of a familiar figure. So it's Yukaina Kimura, then the silver-haired boy next to her is? Akatsuki Koju? Due to the distance, Dustless's vision was very blurry. He had to use the Tensigen to observe the surroundings. It's Akatsuki Koju and Yukaina Kimura. Seeing this, Wuqian laughed secretly. Wind blew under his feet and his pace was faster. He turned into a gust of wind and floated to the center of the incident. Chapter 1494. This guy still dares to follow me? Does he want to die? Humph, but it's good that he followed me. How dare he speak ill of me? Nangong Na Yu had been secretly observing Dustless's movements. This guy was extremely hateful. His ability to trick people was extremely vicious. It made people clench their teeth. This was the first time she was treated as a female pervert. She felt extremely aggrieved, and there was a ball of fire in her chest that she had to vent. It was a good time to vent on this idiot who was causing trouble. The street released its own curly beasts. According to the Sanctuary Treaty, it is only right to execute the two of you on the spot. The girl waved her silver spear. Every word she said was like a gem. Her voice was bone-chilling as if she really wanted to kill them. It seems that my worries were unnecessary. In the distance, the shifty-eyed young man said in surprise, "This girl is so strong?" He actually managed to beat those two demons into a retreat. This person had a head of silver hair and was wearing a hat. He looked like a rat that could not be exposed to the light. He looked rather wretched. He was one of the strongest vampires in the world, the fourth true ancestor Koju. But there is no need to kill them. Koju was overflowing with love. He felt that the girl was going too far with her silver spear. After some hesitation, he decided to charge forward. It seemed that he wanted to stop the girl's killing intent. Why is this guy, a vampire, so kind? Dustless was speechless at Koju's meddlesome behavior. Most vampires were not good people. Most of them needed to drink blood. Of course, only a special existence like Koju could be considered a weirdo. Forget it. There is no chance for me to make a move now. I will take advantage of this opportunity to eat and dash. Dustless's eyes glowed. There was no one in the shops. Most people had run away when the two demons attacked. Many restaurants were deserted. It was perfect for poor people like Dustless to eat. The money I stole from those hoodlums and the money I swindled from Natsuki Minamiya is quite a lot, but if I keep wasting it, I'll end up sleeping on the streets sooner or later. Let's eat first and get through each day one by one. Dustless walked into a restaurant and casually found a place to sit down. He brought over all the dishes and soon after, he ignored the fighting outside and ate while silently observing. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. That guy. Natsuki naturally realized that Dustless was trying to take advantage of the situation. She was speechless as she muttered to herself, "How many years has he been starving for him to be so good at picking a free meal?" No one even reported him. Because of the relationship between these two demons, the people in the store all ran away. Who would care about Dustless? Should he tear her apart? The golden-haired demon cultivator roared in fury. Dustless, who had been eating and drinking, also blushed because of Xiao Guqing's behavior. Although this was caused by his carelessness, Xiao Guqing didn't even have the heart to be vigilant at all. He didn't understand that people's hearts were unpredictable. Chapter 1495. Dustless stared at Xiao Guqing with pity and shook his head. This guy was definitely the most useless true ancestor in history, even the weirdest one. This guy is so stupid. These two demons don't look like good guys. They're so quick. They must be repeat offenders. Not to mention Wu Chen and Nangong Natsuyu. Jizhuasheli's face darkened. She was so angry that she stomped her feet. This kid didn't do it on purpose, did he? Jiamo Shuelai looked at Xiao Guqing suspiciously. Damn it. Xiao Guqing was embarrassed. Jiamo Shuelai looked at him like he was an idiot. His face turned red and he felt a burning pain. He wanted to dig a hole and hide. He stared at the blonde young man in anger. Xiao Guqing was speechless. I helped you two out of the kindness of my heart, but you bastards repaid my kindness with ingratitude. Not only did you embarrass me, but you also threatened Jiamo Shuelai. Thinking of this, Xiao Guqing lowered his head in shame, not daring to look at Jiamo Shuelai in the eyes. The battle between true ancestors is indeed not suitable for me. If the other true ancestors knew that I was captured so easily, they might faint from anger. This is so humiliating. Xiao Guqing sighed in his heart. At the same time, a cold light flashed across his eyes. Although he was captured because of his carelessness, it didn't mean that he would resign himself to death. On the contrary, these two bastards had enraged him as a true ancestor. Pop, pop, pop. Clenching his fist, Xiao Guqing released golden lightning bolts. What's going on? The demon who was holding Xiao Guqing exclaimed. Looking at the ferocious eyes, he felt as if he was being stared at by some ancient beast. Boom, boom, boom. Xiao Guqing released a powerful aura. A strong shockwave pushed back the demon who was holding the blade to his throat. The demon frothed at the mouth and fainted. Barely regained the dignity of a true ancestor. Dustless, Natsuki and Jiamo Shuelai murmured. Bastard, how dare you threaten me? Xiao Guqing yelled. Since you want to play so much, have a taste of my fist. Grabbing the corner of the blonde demon's clothes, Xiao Guqing punched him mercilessly. Ka ka ka. A sharp and clear sound rang out, and a bloody tooth protruded from the blonde demon's mouth. After enraging Akatsuki Kogu, he was particularly miserable. Boom boom boom. He was sent flying 20 meters away by Koju's punch, landing right in front of the restaurant where Dustless was eating. Serves you right. Brushing off the dust on his palm, Koju said with a smile. Looks like I don't have to do anything. Seeing this, Nangong Natsuki breathed a sigh of relief. Just as everyone thought that everything would be fine, a sharp beast cry suddenly sounded. Ayo ayo. Zhuahoof, the curly beast that had been hit by Ji Zhuasheli earlier, raised its head and roared towards the sky once again. You can still stand. Ji Zhuasheli once again assumed a fighting posture. Damn it, his skin is so thick. Koju said with a frown. At the same time, he was also tempted by the loud roar. As the fourth ancestor, he controlled 12 powerful whirlwinds, each of which was invincible and could easily flatten an island. Zhuahoof, come here. The blonde demon youth's face was extremely gloomy. He thought that Koju was an idiot and could easily take him down, but who would have thought that this kid was hiding his strength? He looked at Ji Zhuasheli and saw that she was also coldly looking at him, and his neck suddenly shrank. Only when I find a hostage, these guys will hesitate to attack me. The blonde demon youth's eyes swept around and fell on Nangong Natsuki, who was dressed like a gothic loli. His eyes shot out a ferocious light, but then he suddenly thought of something and withdrew his eyes in fear. Am I really going to jail this time? Not even a hostage. The blonde demon youth's face was full of despair. Gulp. Suddenly the sound of food being eaten came from the side. He instinctively looked over and saw a peerless foodie crazily sweeping the food on the table. His eyes suddenly lit up. This bastard. Does he think that I'm a pushover? Dustless's face darkened. Although his eyes have never left the table, he has been observing the situation outside with his observation hockey. I can't even have a peaceful meal, and what the hell is wrong with this world? First, someone came to rob me, and now someone wants to take me as a hostage? Originally, Dustless didn't want to intervene in this boring fight. He planned to leave after eating, but who would have thought that this bastard would think that he was a pushover? Boy, what are you looking at? Come here quickly. The blonde demon youth shouted angrily. He found that Dustless was staring at him, and his eyes were so cold that they stung his skin. Run away, get away from him. Nangong Natsuki reminded. Boy, are you tired of living? Dustless ignored their reminders and coldly said, Within 5 seconds, kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times, then you can get out of here. Is this guy crazy? Koju and the others' faces darkened, thinking that Dustless was simply courting death. What did you say? The blonde demon youth angrily pointed at Dustless and cursed, Zhuoto, tear this boy who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Eoeo. The flaming horse roared a few times and swooped down after receiving the order. Idiot. Dustless was expressionless. In his ears, this was just a boring roar before death, full of desolation. He calmly raised his leg that was covered in a flash of light and kicked out mercilessly. Light speed kick. The light shot out in a straight line, pointlessly hitting Zhuoto. Eoeo. Zhuoto screamed miserably. The powerful force was beyond imagination. In an instant, its huge body was kicked dozens of meters away, followed by a violent explosion of golden light. Even the surrounding street was vaporized. Chapter 1496. That kick. Isn't it a little too powerful? Is he still human? After a long silence, Koju said with a twitching face. Unregistered demon? Ji Zhuasheli had a pair of bracelets to prevent her from entering the demon territory, but Wu Chen didn't have any bracelets. In other words, he was an illegal immigrant who snuck into the island. This guy. Nangong Natyu's gaze also changed. It was filled with a different meaning. If *ck, I overexerted myself. Dustless frowned. He only wanted to kill the scum with a kick, but he didn't expect it to destroy the street as well. At the same time, he noticed that Natsuki was looking at him in a different way. Do you remember that Koju caused tens of billions of damage when he freed the beast? Dustless was embarrassed. He didn't have a single cent on him. Although the damage wasn't as bad as tens of billions, it was still a few 100 million yen. Right, I can push the blame to someone else. Dustless's eyes lit up. His body glowed with a golden light. He flashed and appeared in front of Koju. Kid, this is all your fault. Grabbing Koju's shoulders with both hands, Dustless angrily said, It's all your fault. If it weren't for your overflowing love, how could this have happened? You even dragged me into this. Hurry up and pay for the mental damage. Koju looked at Dustless blankly. After a while he refused. Although it was my carelessness, you are the main culprit. Koju stared at Dustless angrily. Was this guy trying to use him as a scapegoat? Shut up, both of you. Natsuki cut in with a stern voice. You disobeyed the laws of Itagami Island. Both of you are at fault here. Especially that guy called Dustless. He is an unregistered demon. How dare he walk around in front of me? This is unforgivable. Nangong Natyu's face was red, and her angry appearance was very cute. She felt that her intelligence had been underestimated by Dustless. It was one thing for an unregistered demon to be moving around under her nose, but he was also causing destruction one after another. This was a naked humiliation. This Natsuyu Nangong is not easy to deal with. Even if you sell me, I won't be worth tens of billions. Dustless felt a headache coming on. Although Natsuki had decided not to pursue the matter, he was now involved in an accident for no reason. He might have to pay a large sum of money. Woo 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 woo. After a while, an ear-piercing and weird siren resounded in the sky. A large number of police cars rushed over from all directions. Groups of police jumped out of the cars and aimed at Dustless and the others with all kinds of firearms. Take all of them away. In her eyes, these people were all criminals and there was no right or wrong between them. That's good too. Prison food is still food. At least there's a place to stay. Although the environment is a little bad, it's free. No matter what, it's better than sleeping on the streets. Dustless's mutterings almost made Natsuki explode. She had already labeled him as a shipwreck in her heart. I didn't do anything wrong. It was self-defense. Koju and Xianxia were not willing. One of them was a student, and the other was in charge of monitoring the true ancestor. How could they go to prison for no reason? Dustless watched them silently. In any case, none of this had anything to do with him. Little Natsuki, there's no need. Don't use small. She picked up her fan and rudely hit Koju. Natsuki said seriously, Can't you two learn from others? Nangong Nayu pointed at Dustless who was sitting there obediently. This guy is really a jinx. Xianxia helplessly stomped her foot. Her impression of Koju had plummeted. Just like Dustless said, she also thought that it was Koju's fault. If he had not meddled in other people's business, none of this would have happened. Put this on for me. In the carriage where the prisoner was being escorted, a burly policeman walked up to Dustless and took out a special handcuff. It was estimated that it was used to limit magic. However, Dustless did not even look at him. He said coldly, Get out of my way. What did you say? Hearing this, the policeman pointed his gun at Dustless. The latter just stared at him coldly. The temperature in the carriage dropped 100 times. The policeman trembled. Dustless's piercing stare made his heart jump. It's okay. I'll take care of the three of them. Natsuki waved her hand, indicating that the policeman could leave. Compared to Koju and that female student, this guy is too strange. After thinking for a while, Natsuki finally chose to sit beside Dustless. She felt that he was too dangerous. Moreover, his background and identity were mysterious. Although Koju was the fourth true ancestor, he was still her student. Natsuyu knew everything about him. As for the beautiful girl with the silver divine spear, she had already vaguely guessed her identity. Although she didn't know her name, she was very familiar with the origin of that spear. On the other hand, Dustless, Natsuki looked at Dustless from the corner of her eyes. She had a special impression of him. Previously, he had killed the curly beast with a single kick. This was enough to prove that Dustless was not ordinary. There was no trace of magic power. It was just pure strength. Is he a psychic? His strength is not bad. If his background is clean, I can use him. Natsuki's eyes flashed. She quickly came to a decision. She was certain that Dustless was a human. In this world where the true ancestors were rampant, it would not be wrong to rope in a few powerful humans. After all, the true ancestors were vampires and humans were still humans. Chapter 1497. This guy. Dustless frowned slightly. He had also noticed Natsuya's strange behavior. Pervert, why are you so close to me? People are watching, don't even think about messing around. Dustless pointed at Koju and Ji Zhuosheli with a fake smile. Pervert. Koju and Xuanhuan both had weird looks on their faces, especially Koju's. Sometimes, his face would darken and sometimes it would be filled with evil. The corners of Natsuya's mouth twitched violently as she tried her best to control her anger. If you dare to spread rumors again, I promise you will never see the sun again in your life. Natsuya stared at Dustless fiercely and warned, do not doubt my identity. You're not a local, are you? I can. Natsuya made a throat-cutting gesture and showed an evil look on her face. This guy had such a nasty mouth. You want to detain me illegally? Hearing her, Dustless blinked his bright eyes. What he said next almost made Natsuya suffocate. Then, destroying your prison is also self-defense, right? Dustless made a defensive face. These people. Xuanhuan's eyes kept darting around, staring at the three people. Finally, she fixed her eyes on Dustless. That kick of his just now was not normal. Such a person should not be unknown. Xuanhuan lowered her head and thought. She couldn't help but be curious about Dustless's identity. She was able to kick the whirlwind beast with a single kick. Even she could not do it so casually, and she did not use any weapons. This guy is to blame. Staring at Dustless with a gloomy face, Koju looked like an angry wife. He was caught for no reason. Although he was partly responsible, he still wanted to push the blame to Dustless. This guy could have just taught the others a lesson. Why did he have to make such a big fuss? What made Koju want to vomit blood was that Dustless had made such a big fuss. Not only did he get himself caught, but he also wanted Koju to compensate him for the mental damage. This was too much. What are you looking at? Dustless saw Koju's fiery eyes and said with disdain, if I were you, I would find a piece of tofu and kill myself. You're so pitifully weak. That's because I don't want to deal with them, Koju retorted. As a true ancestor, he had the right to be arrogant. Although he was still a dabbler, a true ancestor was still a true ancestor. There were only 4 of them in the entire world. Thus, existences like the true ancestor were almost deified and called invincible by the world. Really? Hearing this, Dustless looked at Koju mockingly and said, I wonder who became someone's captive and even threatened this young lady. The young lady Dustless mentioned was naturally Xuanhuan. But then again. Nangong Yuna suddenly interjected, how do you know Koju is a vampire? Natsuki stared at Dustless suspiciously. Koju definitely wouldn't reveal his identity as a vampire, so how did Dustless find out? Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He opened his mouth but was speechless. He knew Koju was a vampire, and the 4th true ancestor at that. Of course, it was because he had transmigrated. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless explained, I've seen this guy a few times before. He's always looking at women's buttocks with shifty eyes, and he often has nosebleeds. It's very similar to vampires. They get excited when they see a woman's buttocks. Bullshit. Koju roared, unable to contain his anger. Pervert. Xuanhuan's face was full of disgust. She left Koju's side and sat in the empty seat next to Dustless and Natsuki. Then she thought of her mission and a trace of pain flashed through her eyes. Koju's face turned green when he saw Xuanhuan's action. Although this explanation is far-fetched, vampires have this kind of characteristic. Natsuki's eyes were full of suspicion. In fact, Xuanhuan had also noticed Koju's strange fetish. Although it was unavoidable under certain circumstances, it was still annoying to stare at someone's buttocks or breasts. We're here. Get out of the car. The car stopped and Natsuki got out first. She led Dustless and the others into a special building. There was a sign that said, Special Region Police Force. Are they really going to interrogate us? Dustless frowned and followed them in. However, he soon regretted it. Koju was indeed the 4th true ancestor. He just asked some harmless questions and left unscathed. Xuanhuan did the same. Therefore, there was only Dustless and Natsuki in the large interrogation room. This is not fair. Dustless saw Koju's back through the tempered glass. He was furious. Wasn't that kid just the 4th true ancestor? Do you know why they left so quickly? Natsuki calmly sipped her black tea. Privileged dog. Dustless glanced at Xiaoguqing with his sharp eyes and snorted. Privileged dogs? Natsuki nodded elegantly and said, That's right, both of them do have special privileges. After all, their status is different from ordinary people, so some special privileges are necessary. Pedantic. They're just true ancestors. Dustless looked down on her. For others, true ancestors were unreachable, but for him they were nothing. Dustless had fought countless enemies who were stronger than true ancestors. Then do you want some privileges? Nangong Natsuki narrowed her eyes and asked like a cunning fox. Chapter 1498. Wu Chen looked at Nangong Na Yu in surprise. He naturally understood what she meant. What kind of person could have such a privilege? Of course it was his own people. In other words, he could join Itagami Island. Become Koju's follower? Dustless's body trembled. He knew that Itagami Island was the headquarters of Akatsuki Empire. In the future it would expand by 100 times. Koju should be my follower. Dustless shook his head and took a deep breath. I can join, but I have a condition. Join? Natsuki stared at Dustless. Did this idiot think he was joining a terrorist organization? Let's hear it. Natsuki took a sip of her tea and said, as long as it's not too much, I can agree. It's not too much. Dustless didn't mince his words. I need a suitable house. That's all. With his strength, he could live in the open, but every time Dustless met someone who looked at him like he was a beggar, he felt uncomfortable. Is there something wrong with my ears? Natsuki muttered. Are you sure you only want a house? If I agree to such a simple condition, you will be a magician from now on. Natsuki could make the decision for such a small matter. Speaking of which, Natsuki suddenly remembered Dustless's ability and asked, is that light element magic you're an expert in? Magic? I don't know that kind of thing. You can think of me as a psychic, Dustless said. If there's nothing else, please arrange a place for me to stay. I need to rest. Dustless had been living in the open since he came to this world. He never felt the warmth of home. Watch your tone. From now on I'm your boss. Nangong Natsuki said unhappily. Her tone was extremely arrogant as she said complacently, be careful or I'll deduct your salary. This girl? Hearing this, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only change the topic. What's my address? Don't worry, I have a mission for you. Natsuki waved her hand and wisely said, you have met Koju before, right? Your task in the future is to keep an eye on him. The house I gave you is near his house. Monitor him? The corner of Dustless's mouth twitched and he said unhappily, what's the reason? Even though he knew that Koju was the fourth true ancestor, Dustless still wanted to make things difficult for Natsuki. Monitoring someone was fine, but there had to be a reason. He is the fourth true ancestor. Natsuyu revealed Koju's identity without any shame. This guy isn't hesitant at all when it's time to sell out his teammates. Dustless could already see Koju's constipated face after he found out the truth. He could understand Natsuki's order to keep an eye on Koju. As a magical practitioner, it was her duty to protect this city. The fourth true ancestor was the most unstable factor, so it was understandable that he would be monitored. Gosh, Koju is going to become a national treasure. Dustless was quite jealous of this kid. The Lion King organization wanted to monitor Koju, and even gave him a future princess. Even though Xuanhuan was hostile to Koju because of him, she still had to follow her orders and continue monitoring Koju. And now, Dustless had to monitor Koju as well, so he was speechless. Here are the keys. Natsuki threw a bunch of keys to Dustless and said seriously, but the house you live in is too big and someone is renting it. You also have a roommate. Do you have to be like this? You can't even afford a house? What kind of crappy organization is this? Just close down, Dustless said unhappily. Being a hired thug is the fastest way to make money. There's nothing we can do about it. We have limited funds, so you have to be considerate of our organization. Natsuki's expression was normal. Only this once. Don't do it again. Hurry up and take me there. Dustless didn't want to talk nonsense. Staying in this kind of stuffy environment made him uncomfortable. Although he wasn't used to living with other people, it was better than living outside. Great. Natsuki smiled and nodded and then left with Dustless. In an apartment that was not bad. That's Koju's house. Natsuki pointed at the house next door, which had the word Koju on it. Your mission from now on is to monitor Koju. I'll watch him at school and you'll watch his house. That way I can rest assured. Natsuki said with a relaxed expression. This is your room. Of course your roommate is there too. Natsuki pointed at the door and said, I have classes tomorrow. You can go in by yourself. It's about the same as the Lion King organization. Dustless looked at Natsuki's disappearing figure and muttered to himself. When he was about to knock on the door, he suddenly paused. Why would I knock when I have the key? Stupid. Creak. With a creak, the door was gently pushed open by Dustless. When he was about to check the room, Dustless was shocked by what he saw. A naked young girl was wearing clothes and her hair was still wet. She seemed to have just taken a shower. Dustless also found that she was unexpectedly familiar. Miss Jijua, why are you here? Did you go to the wrong room? Wuxialover, who was staring at Wu Qin in a daze, was also staring at him in a daze. Could it be, this guy is my roommate? Dustless's face twitched. He suddenly found that the key in Wuxialover's sailor suit was exactly the same as his. Obviously, Wuxialover was also the owner of this apartment. Chapter 1499. Dustless was stunned and he couldn't help but curse Natsuki in his mind. That kid must have done it on purpose. If I get the chance, I will definitely spank her ass. At the same time, Dustless was also depressed. Natsuki was obviously using her power to avenge a personal grudge. She must have known that Wuxialover was her tenant. However, Natsuki didn't mention it. Obviously she was doing it on purpose. Dirty? Wuxialover's face blushed. A silver spear appeared in her hand, and she thrust it towards Wuxialover mercilessly. This spear is evil and it's famous. It's even more famous than that fake ancestor. I heard that it can even kill immortal ancestors. But I'm not a real ancestor. Facing the sharp light of the snow cloud wolf, Dustless stood still like a statue. Busashoku hardening. Dustless murmured in his mind. His abdomen turned dark and his skin was even harder than diamonds. Clang, clang, clang. A loud noise spread out and Wuxialover's arm went numb. How is this possible? It didn't pierce through this guy? Although I was trying to scare him and didn't use all my power, the power of the snow cloud wolf is beyond doubt. It can't even pierce through his skin? Isn't this a little too outrageous? Wuxialover stared at Wu Qin in shock, while waves of shock rose in her heart. This spear is the 7th type of assault demon machine gun, Snow Cloud Wolf. It is a secret weapon developed by the Lion King organization to fight against the demons. The spell engraved on that Snow Cloud Wolf is called Godhead Vibration Wave Spell. It can nullify any magic power and it can cut through any protective screen. It is the only weapon successfully used by the Lion King organization to fight against the demons. Recalling the origin of the spear, Dustless explained in a bland tone, to some extent, this spear can kill magicians and demons and even immortal ancestors. No, it used to be like this, but I don't think so anymore. Wuxialover suddenly shook her head, took a deep look at Dustless and said, "Aren't you the one who was hit by the snow cloud wolf?" A wisp of an arc appeared on the corners of Wu Chen's mouth when he heard this, and he explained. This is understandable. Nothing is absolute. Perhaps I'm that special case. Dustless was neither a real ancestor nor a magician, so that Snow Cloud Wolf was not useful to him. Let me introduce myself. I am Dustless. From now on, I will be your roommate. Shaking the key in his hand, Dustless, he tried his best to maintain a gentle look. I don't feel at ease having a roommate like you. You don't even make a sound when you walk, and why didn't you knock on the door? Wuxialover asked in an unfriendly manner. She was very alert towards Wu Qin. Knock? This is my home. Do I need to knock on the door? Wu Qin asked sharply. Meanwhile, he awkwardly glanced at Wuxialover and said, That's not important. Mississippi Wuxialover, before asking these boring questions, can you put on your clothes first? Whoosh. Right at this moment, a faint breeze blew over. Wuxialover, who was barely clothed, shivered, and her face instantly turned as red as a ripe apple. It's all your fault. Wuxialover glared at Dustless with her sharp eyes, then decisively closed the door. It seemed that she was going to put on her clothes. Wuxialover then heard an ear-piercing scream. She was probably cursing Dustless. He's surprisingly slow, but he's ridiculously sharp when it comes to combat. Dustless shook his head, leaned against the wall and glanced at Koju's house. A strange light flashed across his eyes. Koju seems to have a sister called Koju. Koju seems to have Agurola living in her body, said Wuxialover. If only I had come here a few years earlier, that bastard Koju would have taken advantage of me. While sighing, Wuxialover cursed Koju. Koju is such a loser, but good things always happen to him. God is so unfair. What annoyed Dustless the most was that he had to keep an eye on Koju. Creak. At the same time, the closed door suddenly opened. Wuxialover came into Wuxialover's sight. If you dare to tell anyone about what happened just now, I will kill you, said the wolf, pointing at Dustless's chin. And how do you know who I am? We are in the same line of work. I am an attack mage in the Special Regions Police Force. Although I don't know you, everyone knows about your snow wolf. Dustless walked over Wuxialover's shoulder and into the living room. He nodded slightly. The living room was not big, but it was clean. There were 2 bedrooms, one for Xuanhuan and the other for Dustless. You are an attack mage? Hearing this, Xuanhuan stared at Dustless in surprise, but she didn't ask any further. She would find out later when she went back to the Lion King organization. Anyway, we have the same mission, to keep an eye on Koju, the 4th true ancestor. Dustless put on a sad face and asked for help. Miss Jijua, how about we share information? Can you tell me anything useful? Asked Xuanhuan. Well? Dustless rolled his eyes. What can I tell you? Nothing. He had just accepted this job. Well? I have been following Koju. That guy is really promiscuous. Not only does he stare at women's butts every day, he is also delusional, perverted, and scumbag. You have to be careful of that perverted vampire. Stay away from Koju, especially when he drinks your blood. He won't even let his own sister go. He won't even let his own sister go? Xuanhuan's eyes popped out. She was shocked by Dustless's news. Then she yelled furiously, I will kill that scumbag. Chapter 1500. Looking at Xuanhuan, Dustless was shocked. Xuanhuan had been releasing an oppressive vibe. Obviously she was not just talking about it. This was the real deal. Cough cough cough. Wait. Xuanhuan walked out of the room with the wolf in her hand. Dustless hurriedly pulled her back. Although he hated Koju as well, that guy was not dead yet. He just needed to stir up some trouble and break the relationship between Xuanhuan and Koju. Why are you pulling me back? Xuanhuan asked unhappily. You have no evidence. Without evidence, you are killing innocent people. Do you understand? You are disregarding human lives. As the saying goes, a thief takes the stolen goods. When his true colors are exposed, it won't be too late for you to teach him a lesson. If you kill Koju for no reason, you won't be able to explain it to the Lion King organization. Are you willing to give up your youth for a scum? There was a saying that listening to a wise man was better than reading books for 10 years. Hearing this, Xuanhuan suddenly felt enlightened and immediately nodded. It would be a great loss for her to sacrifice herself for a scum. What do you want? Why did you encourage me to kill Koju? After a while, she stared at Wu Chen with a suspicious look in her eyes. Xuanhuan was not a 3-year-old child. She had wanted to kill Xiao Guqing just now out of anger, but now she had sensed a conspiracy. This girl is hard to fool. Dustless was confused. He glanced at Xuanhuan's clear eyes and continued, Instigate? It was complete nonsense. Don't forget that I am also a watcher of Koju. This guy should not have appeared in the world. His appearance might break the balance of the Holy Realm Treaty, and the human race might fall into an abyss of suffering again. If Koju is evil, we don't need to protect him. We just need to kill him. But now, he is a pervert, which is the opposite of what a true ancestor should be like. Maybe he will do something even worse in the future. This guy. Hearing this, Xuanhuan frowned slightly. She also felt that what Dustless said made sense, but when these words came out of Dustless's mouth, it sounded as if he was thinking for the whole world, which made her feel uncomfortable. All in all, Miss GMO, you have to be careful of Koju, Dustless reminded her again. He is a true ancestor, one of the most powerful beings on this planet. Of course. If I decide that he is not suitable for the true ancestor, or if he threatens the survival of humanity, I will kill him without hesitation. Xuanhuan said with a pair of blazing eyes. This was her mission. Naive? Hearing this, Dustless silently shook his head. In fact, Xuanhuan didn't send Xiao Guqing to keep an eye on Xuanhuan. Instead, the Lion King organization wanted Xuanhuan to become Xiao Guqing's partner. Chapter 1501. He can fly. Koju was also shocked and looked at Dustless with jealousy. He, a grand true ancestor, still needed to walk, but a mere mortal like Dustless was playing with technology, flying. What are you two doing here? Nangong Natiu asked with a frown. My task is to keep an eye on the 4th true ancestor. Xuanhuan said bluntly. What about you? Natsuki glanced at Dustless. She was the one who had sent Dustless to monitor Koju. This little girl wanted to see the fireworks and forced me to bring her here. Originally, I wasn't interested in this kind of thing. Just think of it as me coming here for a vacation. Dustless shrugged and said casually. Traveling? Natsuki almost fainted from anger. She didn't know why, but whenever she was in the same space as Dustless, she always felt uncomfortable. Wherever she went, she felt uncomfortable. This fellow, was simply too infuriating. Ao, 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 heart-wrenching screams filled the sky, causing everyone's legs to go cold, not daring to take another step forward. Hurry up, Koju. Hearing the miserable screams, Natsuya impatiently grabbed Koju's clothes and rushed to the scene. Jijua and Shelly followed closely behind her. Only Dustless was lazily walking back and forth. Idiot, you'll be walking right into a trap if you go. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. That girl called Asteroidi had some skill. Koju hadn't truly sucked blood yet, so he would have a hard time against her. Ao 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 ao. The horrifying screams were getting closer and closer, and at the same time, the violent tremors were getting clearer and clearer. In a trance, Dustless could even see Asteludi's strange curly beast, Rose's fingertips. She was devouring a huge wild horse. An artificial life form that can devour curly beasts. That's rare. Dustless sighed with emotion. His eye technique was peerless, and as such, his vision was much clearer than Koju and the others. An artificial life that could devour curly beasts? Do you think we're kids? Koju turned his head and asked in an unfriendly tone. His eyes were clearly saying, "Don't even think about treating me like an idiot again. It's coming." Since Koju was facing him, he didn't pay attention to Dustless's words. "Get away from Koju," Nangong Natsuyu loudly warned. At the same time, she had already left. Bang bang bang. With a loud explosion, Koju was sent flying and disappeared without a trace. How pitiful. Even this guy can sit on the true ancestor's seat. I feel like I'm a god, Dustless complained. This was the first time he was cursing the heavens for being unfair. Good cabbages were all eaten by pigs. Damn it. 100 meters away, Koju was lying miserably in the ruins. His body was covered in wounds and he grimaced in pain. And the one who launched the attack was the Asteroidi Dustless had mentioned before. This guy is really a devouring curly beast? Jijua Shelly gasped in disbelief. This was the first time he had seen such an unbelievable scene. Nangong Natsuyu was also surprised, but she was much calmer. Her gem-like eyes looked at the blurry silhouette in the darkness. Her tone was filled with hostility. Dustless, what are you waiting for? Capture him for me. Nangong Natsuyu ordered sternly. This is our mission. As the attack mages of Itagami Island, we must capture this troublesome person. Capture him now. Ha! Dustless was stunned. He looked at Nangong Natsuyu in disbelief and curled his lips. Really, if I knew that attack mages were so busy, I would have rejected this job. You want to capture me? You're just a nameless junior? The blonde man said. Your true ancestor was defeated and you want to defeat me? You're too naive. Boom 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 boom. At the same time, a battle broke out on the other side. Allah Allah Allah. That transfer student from the middle division is quite strong. He's more trustworthy than a certain true ancestor. Nangong Natsuyu glanced at Koju and teased. Shut up. It's none of your business. Koju said indignantly. As a true ancestor, there was a reason why he was so weak. Other than the fact that he had only been a true ancestor for a short period of time, another reason was that he had not sucked blood yet. Fourth true ancestor. Open your eyes and take a good look. On Dustless's side, both sides were ready to fight. Nangong Natsuyu and Koju also looked over. They were curious about Dustless's strength. I'm an armed exorcist from Lorden Lingjia. I'm a monk from the Western European Church. My name is Rudolf Ostak. I came to visit Itagami Island. My goal is to destroy this island and take back my holy relic. After saying that, Rudolf Ostak took out his huge battle axe. Nameless Junior, quickly take out your weapon and fight me. Ostak's face was filled with arrogance as he skillfully brandished his battle axe, which emitted a chilling light. Forget about the weapon. Use it yourself. You're already so old, but you're still wearing such heavy armor and holding such a heavy axe. You're really strong, old man. Slightly moving his sore shoulders, Wu Chen said lazily. However, I've always respected the old and loved the young. This time I'll use my bare hands to deal with you. If I use a sword, I'm afraid others will say that I'm bullying you. Bastard, are you looking down on me? Ostak was furious. Wu Chen was looking down on him. He wanted to fight him with his bare hands. He was treating him like Cha-Cha. Isn't this a bit too much? Nangong Natsuyu was worried. Her opponent was not a nobody. He was an annihilator from the Western European Church. Chapter 1502. An Eastern European monk? Natsuki Nangong sighed. She already knew what this annihilator was after, the relic of the Holy One. It was the relic of the Eastern European Church, and it was not impossible to take it. After all, it belonged to someone else. However, this method was too extreme and Natsuki Nangong would not accept it. Ah! Rudolf Ostak, who was holding the giant axe, roared in excitement. His face was filled with hysteria, and there were even tears at the corners of his eyes. In a trance, he seemed to have seen himself retrieving the Holy One's right wrist. I'm sorry. Although I sympathize with the painful experience of your church, I'm still working in this city. If you are willing to repent, I don't mind giving you a way out, Dustless said with a compassionate face. Repent? What a joke. Rudolf Ostak was infuriated by Chen Fan's words. His golden hair stood on end like a raging lion. When Itinerant God Island was first built, there was no suitable material to replace it. That guy called Itinerant God Chen Luo eventually targeted the relic of my church. Rudolf Ostak became even more crazed and terrifying as he spoke. A brainwashed idiot. Dustless did not want to listen to his nonsense. He interrupted him directly. If negotiation is useless, then please disappear from my sight forever. Whoosh, whoosh. The huge heavy axe attacked with full force, mercilessly chopping towards Wu Chen's head. Wait. Dustless did not move. He looked at the black axe indifferently. He did not make any defensive movements. It seemed like he was really going to block the axe that was bigger than him with his bare hands. Idiot. Koju cursed in his mind. He immediately turned around as if he did not want to see Dustless's miserable appearance. After all, he was just an ordinary student who had become a true ancestor not long ago. Clang, clang, clang. A loud shockwave spread out slowly, followed by a strong wind. Due to the strength of the shockwave, Koju was caught off guard and was pushed back by the wind. Plop. Koju slipped and lost his balance. He fell to the ground on his butt. Why is the wind blowing all of a sudden? Koju was confused. He looked at Dustless and was shocked by what he saw. When the black great axe was only an inch away from Dustless's head, a delicate arm easily grabbed the black great axe that was larger than a person. He was only a little bit away from breaking Dustless's head. Damn it. Rudolf Ostak was furious. He was so close, but he didn't have the strength to continue controlling the giant axe. That small hand, which was thinner than a woman's, contained a great amount of strength. Gulp. Koju felt a lump in his throat. He had previously thought that Dustless was a light magus, but now it seemed that he was completely wrong. This guy's strength and body were ridiculously tough like a diamond. Some things, it's time to reconsider. Koju isn't suitable for the true ancestor class. Perhaps someone can do it better than him. Nangong Natsuya's eyes flashed with wisdom. Although she was also shocked by Dustless's strength, she was much more shrewd than Koju. No one noticed it. Nangong Nayu's eyes shone with a strange light. The way she looked at Dustless changed subtly. Who the hell are you? Rudolf Ostak asked in fear. This guy's body didn't leak any mana, and when he attacked, there were no special energy fluctuations. He was almost the same as an ordinary person. But this was the strangest thing. How could an ordinary person grab his great axe with their bare hands? Crack, crack. A crisp sound suddenly rang out. Rudolf Ostak was startled at first, but he suddenly felt that his great axe was much lighter than usual. He opened his eyes wide in curiosity. Crack, crack. The great axe that was larger than a person was continuously broken into pieces. Dustless had used his wrist strength to crush Rudolf Ostak's beloved weapon. Bastard. Regaining his senses, Rudolf Ostak glared at Dustless. He vented all his anger on Dustless, and his fist that was as large as a human's head smashed towards him. Puchi. With a flash of a blade, Dustless chopped off Rudolf's right arm. Ah! Rudolf Ostak let out a miserable howl. Blood flowed out of his mouth, and the intense pain made him roll on the ground in agony. This way you should be more obedient, Dustless said coldly. His tone wasn't that cold, but it made people feel a chill that went deep into their soul. Well done. Patting Dustless's shoulder, Natsuya gave him an expression that said, as expected of my little brother. Immediately, a large group of uniformed police rushed over and surrounded Ostak. Speaking of which, what about that artificial life? Sooner or later, his life will be devoured by the beast inside his body. Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange light. He frowned and said, why don't I? Although she was used, she has already committed a crime. I have decided to keep her by my side and observe her for 3 years. It just so happens that I am lacking a maid. Natsuya waved her lace fan and spoke before Dustless. The reason why she became a maid is more important. TSK. This is an interesting discovery. I didn't expect that Dustless to be so strong. I thought he was just an ordinary police officer, but it seems that I was wrong. That kind of terrifying strength. I don't think there are many people who can do it as easily as him. A mysterious voice sounded under the night sky, and then he silently blended into the darkness. Chapter 1503. Who is that? Although the eavesdropping shadow concealed himself very cleverly and his aura was so weak that it could be ignored, Natsuki, who was focused on Rudolf Ostak, didn't notice him. However, Dustless, who was listening to everything, saw everything clearly. It seems to be Motoki Yase, who was monitoring Koju City. Using his eye power, Chin Fan was able to see everything a few kilometers away. Motoki Yase's blurry face gradually became clearer. He probably went to inform the Lion King organization. Dustless was too lazy to stop him. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. What would be exposed sooner or later. In any case, with Natsuki Nangong protecting him, Dustless had nothing to worry about. At this moment, Rudolf Ostak seemed to have taken a stimulant. His entire body erupted with powerful strength. Even though one of his arms had been chopped off by Dustless, his strength could not be ignored. Bang bang bang. Even though there were 6 or 7 of them, they still couldn't suppress Rudolf Ostak. His overwhelming strength easily sent the SWAT officers flying. He even took advantage of the situation to snatch a submachine gun. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Rudolf Ostak laughed maniacally and then pulled the trigger of his submachine gun. A bunch of idiots. You can't even keep an eye on a criminal. Natsuki had no choice but to find a place to hide. Dense bullets rained down on Dustless like falling snow. The submachine gun spat out a fire snake that was aimed at Dustless without shifting its target. Da. Dustless's body was beaten into a hornet's nest. There were at least hundreds of holes in his body. Damn bastard, fall down for me. Hurry up and fall down for me. Why don't you fall down? You have to fall down for me. Rudolf Ostak's eyes were bloodshot. He kept shooting at Wu Chen's body, but the effect was negligible. His harvest was minimal. Dustless was beaten to a pulp. He didn't even have a scratch on him. The worst thing was that his eyes were lazy. He looked as if he was about to fall asleep. Bastard. Rudolf Ostak was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. You should at least be a little more professional. You should understand that you are being shot by a machine gun. You shouldn't look like a sleepy worm. Kojukoin, hurry up and come out. I saw you and Natsuki Nangong-sensei coming out. In the abandoned depressing factory, there was suddenly a rather beautiful sound of nature. Wu Chen bowed her head and pondered. She was somewhat familiar with this strange sound. Oh, it's Naga? Natsuki Nangong clenched her fists. She didn't expect Xiao Nagisa to appear at this time. It's not bad to have someone die with me. Ostak was completely haunted. Dustless Ostak couldn't kill him. He could only aim at Naga. Chapter 1504. A faint ripple finally appeared on Xiao Nagisa's unwavering face, but it disappeared so quickly that neither Dustless nor Nangong Natsuyu was able to catch that brief moment. What's the matter? Wasting other people's time is a crime. Dustless spoke casually and even rudely to the 4th true ancestor, Agrora. You? Nangong Natsuyu's face twitched as she glanced at Dustless. She had a feeling that this guy would kill her one day. However, she could also see that something was fishy. It should be because of the 4th true ancestor. His consciousness has taken over Xiao Nagisa's body. Nangong Natsuyu frowned and speculated, why did he suddenly appear? Could it be a threat to us? While Nangong Natsuyu was lost in her thoughts, Dustless was also in deep thought. However, unlike Nangong Natsuyu, Dustless didn't feel any fear when facing a true ancestor. He was as calm as still water, and more than that, he was curious. A life form that was artificially created, yet he was afraid that she would ruin his reputation. Nothing, Xiao Nagisa, no, Agrora said in an extremely calm tone, I'm just curious. However, there are some things that are better left unknown. I don't want that young man to understand what happened today. That young man? Xiao Guqing? That's right. Occupying someone else's sister's body is a bad image. Dustless nodded in agreement. However, Dustless didn't feel the same way. He was still planning to seduce someone else's sister, so he would inevitably offend Aurora. And you? Aurora looked at Dustless coldly, and her cold tone remained arrogant. If you have any unrealistic thoughts, I advise you to extinguish them as soon as possible. This guy? Hearing this, Dustless frowned and thought to himself, does she really think that the true ancestor is invincible? In the end, she's just a created life form. I don't understand what you mean by unrealistic thoughts. If you can, you better say it clearly. I'm not good at thinking, Dustless said expressionlessly. Why did you approach Akatsuki Koju? After saying this, Aurora looked at Natsuki Nangong. His meaning was self-evident. He had completely ignored Dustless's existence. So that's how it is. This guy probably thinks that Natsuki has been using Koju all this time. Dustless suddenly understood. Natsuki Nangong was dragging Koju everywhere to put out fires. It was indeed dangerous. Today, for example, Aurora clearly knew the identity of the fourth true ancestor and knew that he had never sucked blood before, yet he still asked Aurora to come over and help. Looks like it has nothing to do with me. But this guy's tone is really annoying. Dustless slandered Agurola inwardly as he swept a glance at him. Boom boom boom. Right at this moment, when Dustless thought that it had nothing to do with him, a blue light swept over and locked onto Dustless, who had let down his guard. And the attacker was precisely Aurora. That scheming attacking as soon as he said so. While Dustless was cursing, a golden light flashed on the surface of his skin. He knew that the monster emitting the azure ray of light was the 12th true ancestor, the enchantress's azure ice. Kensusanu. His expression turned cold, and the vigorous chakra in his body erupted. A huge monster instantly reinforced Dustless's head. Ka. Kensusanu suddenly trembled violently. Then a large amount of cold mist inexplicably appeared in the surroundings. A large number of ice blocks formed on the surface of Kensusanu, but Dustless inside was unscathed. No wonder you dared to provoke a true ancestor. With this kind of strength, you are indeed qualified. Looking at the defrosted Kensusanu, although the surface was filled with frost and ice, Dustless's expression was normal. He was not affected at all. Dustless smiled but did not say anything. To the people of this world, a true ancestor was the most powerful kind. This kind of concept was deeply ingrained. Without the Sanctuary Treaty, perhaps the human race would have already been annihilated. However, the concept of a true ancestor being invincible and invincible couldn't be applied to Dustless. Ka. Another sound of ice forming could be heard. However, this time it wasn't freezing but shattering. It can't freeze him? This voice was filled with disbelief. Even Natsuki's eyes were wide open. Her worldview was somewhat confused. Could it be that there was a human in this world that could rival a true ancestor? She couldn't help but feel excited. All along, humans and vampires seemed to be harmonious, but in reality it was the opposite. A few decades ago there was even a war. Strange, it doesn't seem to be magic power. Agurola asked, somewhat puzzled. Looking at that frightening appearance, she couldn't help but be somewhat alarmed. She unexpectedly felt a trace of fatal oppression. It was hard to imagine that a human could actually contend against a true ancestor. Even if she wasn't complete now, the shock it brought was indescribable. In particular, this strange monster in front of her made her feel a sense of threat. It's really strange, her blood must be very delicious, right? Suddenly this thought appeared in Aurora's mind. The more powerful a person was, the more delicious her blood would be. Kensusanu, condense. Her dry lips softly spat out a few words. Kensusanu's size suddenly began to grow. The layer of ice on the surface also collapsed in an instant, turning into debris. Kensusanu's size also gradually increased. Although Dustless didn't release his full strength, its size was still a head bigger than the enchantress's azure ice. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.